Welcome to discussion 4B, the organization of Congress. Here are our topics for today. How is the House of Representatives organized? How is the Senate organized? And what are the roles of political parties in organizing Congress? So let's look at the House, the United States House of Representatives. Every 2 years, a new Congress is seated. And that means that all the members of the House have been elected, and 1/3 of the Senate has been elected in a new term for Congress. One of the first orders of business as a new term begins is to select leaders and rules for conducting business. Generally, there are 2 sessions per year. The Constitution mandates that there be at least 1 session per year of Congress. And one of those sessions is known as a lame duck session. When Congress reconvenes after November, after the general election, in even number years, knowing that some members of Congress have just lost an election and will not return. So that's where the term lame duck comes from. The term can also apply to a president who will not return to office, and the time period in between when the general election took place and the next inauguration takes place. The House of Representatives is traditionally organized more tightly than the Senate, and that's by necessity because there's 435 members of the House. So loyalty and party line votes are more common in the House. The rules in the House tend to be much more structured than they do in the Senate because there's so many members of the House. So one of the most important leadership positions, if not the most important leadership position in the House, is the Speaker of the House. This is the only officer of the House that's mentioned in the Constitution. It's the most powerful position in the House, modeled after the Speaker in the House of Commons. Traditionally, the Speaker of the House is a member of the majority party. The entire House, all 435 members, vote on electing a Speaker at the beginning of each new Congress. The Speaker has usually served in the House for a long time and in other leadership positions, which are seen as an apprenticeship to becoming Speaker. So the responsibilities of the Speaker include presiding over the House, presiding over the business of the House, overseeing the business, being the official spokesperson for the House, and after the Vice President, being next in line to the presidency. That's why it says second in line to the President, because the Vice President would be first in line. The Speaker acts as a liaison with the President and has great political influence within the chamber. And the Speaker is supposed to get party-backed legislation through the House. Some famous past speakers who have shaped the role of Speaker today. There's Henry Clay, who is a Republican from Kentucky. He's the first person to hold the speakership for a long time, 6 terms. So before that, it was more of a revolving door. The House became more professionalized in the late 1800s, and the role of the Speaker also became more professionalized. There's Joe Cannon, a Republican from Illinois, who made the position very, very powerful with control over the committees. The reaction to Joe Cannon's power was negative, so many subsequent speakers have used informal powers like their personality rather than formal power. Newt Gingrich is a famous former speaker. He returned more formal powers to the position of Speaker in the 105th Congress, and we know that he implemented the Contract with America, was a driving force behind the devolution revolution, new federalism, returning power to the states. He resigned in the late 90s, and Nancy Pelosi is also a famous former speaker, the first woman to hold the position of Speaker of the House. A party conference or caucus is also very, very important in the House. This is a formal gathering of all party members. we know that political parties themselves are weaker, but this is not true inside Congress. The entire organization of Congress, along with its leadership, is centered around political parties. And this is shown in a party caucus or a party conference. So these are made up of party members who gather to discuss strategy, agendas, and legislative priorities, and they elect their leadership. If a political party can show the discipline to act together, to act as one, then their power in the legislative chamber is usually enhanced. The most important leaders within a party can be found exerting their power inside the party caucuses to keep everybody in the party, in the conference, together. And they also, in their parties, will have leadership select committee chairs. There's also a few other important positions in the House as well. There's Majority Leader. This is the second most important person in the House. They're elected just by members of their party. They're elected just by the party caucus. And first I should back up and say that a majority party, we should clarify what that means. A majority party in the House and the Senate is the party that has the greatest number of members. So the Speaker in the House and all committee chairs and members become somebody who is part of the majority party. And a minority party is the party with the second most members. And it's very, very important with the way that Congress is structured to be the majority party. There's so much more power that comes with that. The House Majority Leader is the second most important person in the House. They are elected just by members of their own party, just by their party caucus. They help the Speaker schedule proposed legislation for debate. And they assist the House Speaker in conducting business. The House Minority Leader is also elected by the Minority Party caucus, and they play a similar role as the Majority Leader, but not as powerful. There's also positions known as whips. There's the Republican and Democratic whips. They both have them. They are elected by their party members in a caucus. They assist the Speaker and the Majority Leader and Minority Leader in their leadership efforts. The name comes from a British term for fox hunting, the whipper-in, who keeps the hounds together. So it's the same idea where the whip has to whip the Democrats and Republicans into party line votes on issues where the leadership wants a party line vote. They maintain close contact with all members on important votes. They get members to toe the party line. There are also deputy whips, and they are an important link between the party leadership and party members. And a famous example is Tom DeLay, who got the Republicans in line with the vote to impeach Clinton, which surprised Clinton. I don't think Clinton had realized that impeachment was a serious possibility. Now, if we look at tone, the Senate is smaller in size. There's only 100 senators. It's more collegial. There are less formal rules in the Senate compared to the House. There's always been a tradition of folkways, unwritten rules of behavior, very polite. Oftentimes members will say very polite things when they're addressing each other on the floor. My very able, learned, and distinguished colleague. Individual senators have more power in the Senate compared to individual members of the House. So traditionally it's harder to lead in the Senate than in the House. So for the Senate, there are leadership positions as well, just like in the House. There are majority and minority leaders, there's majority and minority whips, and they function very similarly to the corresponding House positions. But there are a few unique leadership positions in the Senate that are not in the House. Just like there's no Speaker of the Senate. The Speaker of the House is only in the House. The President of the Senate. This is mentioned in the Constitution. And the Vice President of the United States is the presiding officer of the United States Senate. So the Vice President is the President of the Senate. And that's what president means, presiding officer. Now really, the only thing that the President of the Senate, who is the Vice President of the United States, does is vote in the case of a tie, where there's a 50-50 vote or a 49-49 vote. That doesn't happen too often. So because the President of the Senate doesn't really get called upon that often to be in the Senate, this position is seen as more perfunctory. It's just for show. It's for function. It's not really an important leadership position unless there's a tie vote. That's when it becomes important. But most of the time, is being the President of the Senate, that gets delegated to some junior member of the Senate because it's not really a big deal. There's also the President pro tempore, the President pro tem. This is usually a member of the majority party, and their position is to preside over the Senate in the absence of the Vice President of the United States, the President of the Senate. Usually the most senior member of the majority party, and just like the President of the Senate, this is seen as a more perfunctory position. So usually they delegate it to a junior member of the Senate as well. The Senate Majority Leader is elected by the majority party. So we know the Senate is more collegial with less rules compared to the House. So the Senate Majority Leader is seen as less powerful than the Speaker of the House, less of a power position. It's a tough job controlling the more active, assertive, and consequently less predictable membership of the Senate. Both houses of Congress are very closely organized by political party and the strength of that party in each house. The committee system is controlled by the majority party in each house. The party caucus and conferences perform very important functions like nominating and electing party officers, reviewing committee assignments, discussing party policy, imposing party discipline, setting party themes, coordinating the media. And we know that a party caucus in Congress is also called a conference. Each party also has specialized committees to fulfill certain tasks. Like there's a committee on committees, and it's also called a steering committee. Both parties have them, and they make committee assignments. Each party also has a campaign committee to assist members in their re-election bids. All right, that is a brief, quick look at the organization of Congress. Let me know at the link below if you have any comments, questions, or anything that needs clarification. That brings us to the end. Hope it helped, and good luck studying.